And welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Charlie from London's Original. So Charlie is actually on for a really good series that we're going to start off in this first episode with. It's entitled "Which is the best position for this Fulham player?" We're going to go through three Fulham players and just really talk about which position is best for him. It's going to be Emil Smith Rowe, Harry Wilson, and Alex Iwobi because they can play in different positions. What is the best position for them in Marco's system? That's what's going to make this show interesting. And potentially, we're going to do many shows just like this. And I'm very happy to have Charlie on the show. He has a wonderful YouTube channel I would highly recommend, and also a very good place to read what he has to say is on Medium. And we're going to be talking about that all coming up. Before I do anything else, I want to welcome Charlie to the show. Charlie, welcome to Cottage Talk. Thank you so much for joining me.
Ross, it's an absolute pleasure, mate. Kind words, and I'm not sure that I can live up to all of them, but I'll give it my best shot. But yeah, mate, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Listen, it's my pleasure having you on. I've now listened to you in a couple different places. I saw you with Jack Kelly. I heard you with Dan Crawford. Just wonderful stuff. And you are someone that people need to be following. Please do check out his YouTube channel and reading because you have a lot to share. And I would highly recommend following him also on X on it's Blancos Away, correct?
That's the one. That's the one.
Okay. Excellent stuff. All right. So before we get to really getting into the show, I do want to mention something that I mentioned in the last show. And I want to thank the 9 people that have recently subscribed to the 2 free months of Patreon access. Well, I am still offering it. So please do subscribe to the 2 free months of access. And what's great about this is that we're going to be doing a lot of shows that are going to be exclusive right here on the Cottage Talk Patreon page. What I mean by that is that this episode, even though we are going live here, the actual podcast version is going to be exclusive here. So all you need to do is, as I just shared my screen, just claim it now. There are 91 spots left, so please do claim it. And you get 2 free months of access to Cottage Talk and on the Patreon page. We'll be doing other free shows, but we're going to do a lot on this Patreon page. I'm going to show it to you, so please do sign up and get this gift from me, 2 free months of access. Okay. Charlie, how you doing? Are you looking forward to doing the show?
Of course I am, my man. Listen, we've got some good stuff to talk about. I'm sure we'll get into it all. Some signings possibly. Obviously, we're going to discuss some molders, some best players. But I think this is going to be a good show, Russ. Let's do it.
I think it's going to be a great show. So let's start here. Before we talk about, we're going to also mention your article, which I read today, which I think is great, because I think there's a lot that I really want to get your thoughts on. And then we'll talk about the 3 players I mentioned as well. But there was some interesting information today, Charlie. I'm curious your thoughts on it. Listen, Fulham have not signed any players yet. I've seen your response to it. I'm with you. Get them in now. You're going to Portugal. Can we get the players in for Marco before they get to Portugal? That'd be nice, right? So here are 2 quality players that Fulham are linked to with Juventus. And what I'm being told, and actually you can see the article on handmend.com, Fulham are preparing a bid for the winger. And then also they are going to be having talks about Douglas Luiz. What do you make of these 2 links here, CJ?
I think that we saw what Douglas Luiz can do at Aston Villa. I think that there is no doubt within Luiz's quality. But I think what we see with Luiz is what he could add to this Fulham team. I think he's quite a unique mould, something that this Fulham team doesn't really have. You look at players like Tom Kearney, I think there are elements of his game to Douglas Luiz. But I think what Luiz maybe presents that Kearney doesn't is an element of being able to get around the pitch a bit better, being a bit more industrious while still having that Brazilian flair that Luiz has. But the man that I think is maybe a bit more unknown, but from what I've seen from Juventus fans, they seem less keen to see leave, is Samuel. I can't say his name. Samuel M. Bengala. He scored 6 goals last season 4 goals last season. He got 4 assists as well. As a 20-year-old in Serie A for quite a bad Juventus team for their standards for the old lady. It's quite impressive. I think that Mbingala is the perfect profile of player that Fulham need to target. He's young, he's exciting, he's a winger that will get players off, get the fans from their seat at the Cottage, which is a bit of a rarity nowadays. That's a different question. I think that Mbingala would be the one to watch for me. And for the quoted 10 million, I think it's 10 million pounds. That's a bargain, Ross, for me.
Well, what's interesting here, and I'm glad that you mentioned this because I've seen a lot of the comments from the Juventus supporters, and they're not happy about this, Charlie. So that speaks volumes to me. So listen, they need to make signings. They need a winger. So for me, if this is a player that they've targeted, go and get him. That's the way I'm looking at it. But going back to Douglas Luiz, I remember when he played for Aston Villa. I'm glad that you mentioned your thoughts on him and talked about Tom Kearney. I think he does have that Brazilian flair. I think that's what they're missing, Charlie. Let's talk a little bit about that because we're going to talk about players in central midfield. This is the type of player they need to be signing.
For sure. I think that we sort of saw towards the back end of last season. I think that I mentioned this. Listen, Dan, I know, mate. I'm right at the back. I'm right against the railings, mate. You don't have to tell me. I promise you. But I think what we see with Luiz is what he can add to this Fulham team is something sort of what I just like alluded to. We saw like in the back end of last season that Fulham really did struggle to sort of create chances within that final third, sort of have that player that can unlock a defence. We have two quite industrious midfielders with Sander Berger and Sasa Lukic, but I wouldn't describe any of them who can sort of get that ball on the half-10 and ping a ball into one of our wingers or like even through to Rodrigo Muniz, really. And I think that Luiz as well, this is another thing that maybe will go a bit more underlying to many. He has a great set piece, and put it this way, Russ, I have had enough of seeing Andreas Pereira hit the first man from a corner or hit the wall from
I'm done with that, CJ. I'm done with that.
Oh, please.
No, listen, for me, when I saw the link, and I saw it last season too, Charlie, I thought this is the type of player. I remember him at Aston Villa thinking they need a player like this. And I have been basically really just frustrated with Andreas Pereira. Now, I know that he has his fans. I'm not one of them. I'm just going to tell you that right off the bat. I know our friend Dan Crawford sees value in him, and I see value too. But I'm ready to move on from him, and I think it's time to move on from him and bring in someone that could unlock a team. And I think this is that type of player, CJ.
For sure, mate. For sure. I think. Sorry, I just lost train of thought. Sorry, not very professional from me. But with Luiz, I think when you compare him to Andreas Pereira, like I've sort of put this to Pereira quite a lot of times, and I think that we all sort of know what Pereira can sort of give to this Fulham team. He's very industrious. He gets around the pitch well. He's the lead presser for Fulham, which is a role that none of the 10s that Fulham currently have can really do. So he has got his merits. But when your number 10's best asset is pressing off the ball, I think that there is no wonder that you're creatively a bit stagnant, you know? And I think Luiz would definitely help change that.
Okay, and I'm glad that you said that because we're going to talk about the three players, and one of them is Emile Smith-Rowe. And the one thing that I've always said when I've talked to people about, say, Pereira and Emile Smith-Rowe is that Emile Smith-Rowe, for a good part of the beginning of his Fulham career, did not do the pressing that I think Marco wanted him to, and I think that might have caused a little bit of an issue. But if you're having a player that just presses, that's his best quality, and he's not good on set pieces, and he doesn't score you goals. We're talking about Pereira. Then you need to upgrade there. But again, I'm also going to talk a little bit about how the best to use Emile Smith-Rowe. So we're going to get to that in a bit, but I wanted to start our focus on these two players because it's going to lead to talk about your article that I would go to medium.com and actually check it out. I think you did an excellent job, Charlie, talking about the PSR situation with Fulham. And if you go through the article, and I want you to summarize it for us here, Charlie, you really, when you get to the nuts and bolts, Fulham have money to spend, okay? And they can do it in several ways. And the number that you're going to share, if you really break it down into amortization, how many years, there's a lot of money to spend here. Could you just basically summarize what you wrote?
In a easy summarisation of what I said, because it is quite a drawn out article, um, essentially, Fulham have the ability, because of the previous sales of João Palhinha, Alight and Jay Stansfield, we have the ability this summer to essentially spend £25 million 7 times because of a light amortisation, right? Because we have a £77 million buffer to the sort of risk of running against PSR. And when you counter that in with amortization and player wages and the signing bonus, you can sort of bring it to about you could get in essentially 7 £25 million signs. Obviously, Fulham probably won't do that, but that is sort of just a reference of how much Fulham could spend this summer. And I think in a season where Fulham really do need to do some big squad makeup changing, I think that this is something that we have to capitalise on.
Okay. And that's what's interesting, Charlie, is that when I read your article and you mentioned the players that they could bring in, are you looking for, you personally, a big money spending? Are you looking for a couple players as your signature players that you bring in, similar to like a Smith Rowe? Could they bring in to at the level that they paid for like Smith Rowe, maybe a couple, and then sprinkle in a couple of other players, but you're still spending a good amount of money and still under the PSR situation that they're in?
I think what this Fulham team really lacks, Russ, is a sort of a player with a bit of X factor, like a player with star quality. And me and Jack Kelly talked about this the other week. I still think that Emil Smith Rowe can be that player, but has he showed it at Fulham yet? And you can't really just rely a lot on somebody to maybe show something. I think Fulham have the finances now. We're in a very strong position financially, as you sort of alluded to, us, and as what my article alluded to. We have the money to go and get that player, to go and get that goal scoring winger, that dynamic number 10, that midfielder like Douglas Luiz, who can bring the ball from deep in midfield to sort of the final third into creative areas. I don't think there's any reason to sort of shrimp around with bargain basement signings. Like there's been lots of talk, for example, it's a different type of player, but with like Taremi from to Milan, right? I'm sure that Marco Silva could get him to score 10 goals. He's done it with Raul Jimenez. Why couldn't he do it with Taremi? But why don't we give Marco Silva some real backing to not turn an average player into a decent player? Let's get him some great players to really get that ceiling through for that Fulham team.
See, that's what they're missing. And I'm glad that we're talking about this, Charlie. They have those players that are going to be, say, good, and he turns them into better. I think of like Alex Iwobi, players on that level that are good players, but with Marco, they're better. So many players are like that. But if you have exceptional talent and you let it loose under Marco Silva, I think that will be what takes us to the next level. So that's why I'm glad that we're talking about this. Another thing from your article I want to ask you about is that you were talking about some of the teams around Fulham that don't have the flexibility with PSR that we have. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think there's an opportunity here. I think you mentioned Bournemouth, for example. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, Bournemouth, I think, have for last season have a £66 million loss, right? And by the way, I'll get on to Steve's comment. Just give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
But when you look at where Bournemouth, and I think that the other team that I labelled was Everton, the reason why we saw Bournemouth sell big within the first few weeks of this window was because they had to sell to sort of become compliant with PSR, but they can't really spend those earnings till the next PSR window. So how it works is they go from the 30th of June till the 30th of June. Sorry, the 1st of July till the 30th of June, and your sellings go on to the next transfer window. So, for example, we are reaping the benefits mainly this summer for the sales of João Palhinha, Alight and Jay Stansfield, whereas Bournemouth will be seeing the same with Dean Huijsen and Ziabani and Keke's next window. So Bournemouth this summer, I think, will probably struggle to spend as much. They might get a few in because of Solanke, but they spent big. So I think Bournemouth would be one to watch, as in I'm not sure they'd be finishing as hard as they would next season. And Everton have sort of been in a bit of a predicament for a few years now. We've all sort of heard that story. They need to get more investment. But I won't bore you with that.
Okay.
But I'll get onto Steve's comment. I actually did I just waited. Thank you for your kind words, Steve. But the amortization of the players' wages and the actual staff wages as a whole, when you count in light amortization, comes in at about £31 million. And I did count that in with signings as well. So say that Fulham signed a £25 million player, like I added in a £2.5 million signing bonus and agent fees as well. And I also added in, I think it was 3.8 million in player wages, which is obviously their annual salary, which I think was about £65,000 a week. So I did try and address that. But yeah, I think Fulham are in a strong position. There are clubs, if I'm honest with you, like in a bit of a stronger position. I think Brentford are in a very strong position. Crystal Palace the same. But there is no doubt that Fulham shouldn't be scared in this window to go and attract some real talent.
Okay, very good there, Charlie. Okay, let's move on. Good stuff. And if you're watching live, please feel free to share some comments with us. Charlie, I want to start our review of the three players that we're going to focus on. And the first player I want to get your thoughts on is Emile Smith-Rowe. Now, I listened to your time that you were on the Green Pole podcast with Dan Crawford. Very good, by the way. And that was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to contact you, because when I look at Emile Smith-Rowe, I expect big things from him. But here's the question. We've already seen the situation with Pereira. Marco wants his players to press at that number 10. So with what ESR offers is different. So is his best position the number 10? Is it out wide? Is it the number 8 potentially? Where do you see him ultimately fitting with Marco Silva?
I don't really see it being on the wing, Russ, because I think that he does lack that bit of like electric pace that I think Fulham have seen this Fulham team look best with.
Right.
The problem is with him being in the number 10, sort of what you just said there, Russ. He isn't probably fit enough at the minute, if we're being really, really frank about the situation.
Yes, I agree with you.
That lead presser, right? When Fulham have a target man like Muniz or Rail, they aren't the lead presser. It is Pereira who is the furthest player forward. I think the only way that I can see with this Fulham team that Marco Silva can get the best out of ESR is, one, he has to mould him into somebody who is so fit that he hasn't really even replicated that in his Arsenal days or even his Huddersfield loan. So I think that would be a bit of a turn up. But hey, listen, Marco Silva's done funnier things. But I think what he's going to have to do is probably encourage who I imagine will be Rodrigo Muniz to press more. So I think we'll probably see Muniz come back this summer, probably a bit more lean. We sort of saw it just before his injury at the tail end of last season. He was a lot more, not agile, but he was a lot more fierce without the ball. And I think, say that we want Emile Smith-Rowe to work in that 10 position, which I do think the light is his best position because he can be at the central. Thank you, Melissa. To be sort of light in his best position, light in the number 10, being the central creative player for this Fulham team. Because for me, his technical talent is undoubted, Russ. Like, I'm sure you agree. Right. We saw it in the like starting stages.
It's there, Charlie. It's really there.
Of course it is. Of course. So I think we are probably going to have to see a bit of a change to this Marco Silva system. That's how I'd suggest we see the best out of Emile Smith-Rowe.
Okay. So in your opinion, you're hoping, one, that he gets more fit. And based on what I've seen on social media, he's working on that. So that's a positive, right? He needs to be in the best fitness of his life to play for Fulham. That, to me, is something that they need, okay? If you're Marco, do you still continue to try to, I think, maybe take away something that is a strength of his? We want to see more attacking from Emile Smith-Rowe, more flair from him. If you're asking him to press, and you've already talked about this with Rodrigo, do you think he's going to force him to still press?
So this is sort of the problem. I don't think that he has it in him, because I think just some players are sort of built like that. Some players don't have the ability mentally sometimes, or even physically, to not only get the ball a light and get it a light on the turn, a light and be direct and run at that defense and then go out and press, because that is an enduring 90 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I think what he'll do, is he's going to try and carve out a lighter role for him in this Fulham team. A light in that 10 there is going to see him probably be a bit less busy than Andres Pereira. And I think he will try and hone his creative skills. But I think that will probably mean that we'll see an increased role from the wingers and Rodrigo, from what I just said.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what it will try and do, Marco Silva.
Okay. And actually, Charlie, that's what I want to see as well, because I think when I watched Emil Smith Rowe's season, and I could see that there was an issue with him, and there's been complaints about him at times being a passenger, right? But I think also part of it was square peg and round hole when it came to the pressing. Like you said, I think when he started to press, Charlie, I think it took away from the rest of his game, because
Sure.
I don't think he was fit enough to do what you ultimately want him to do, which is be more offensive. But Marco wants his number 10s to be a complete player. So it's an interesting situation. I hope that we will see more pressing, say, from Rodrigo, which would take the load off of someone like Emil Smith Rowe. But I agree with you. I think the number 10 is the place for him. Would you play him a little bit deeper? Maybe a number 8?
The problem is, I think that what I've said quite a few times this summer is the player that I look at as sort of a breakout star for this Fulham team next season is Sander Berge. And say we want to see the best light of Sander Berge, for me, he has to play in that number 8 role to get forward, to sort of drive Fulham up the pitch, get in transition. That's where we see the Norwegian at his best. I think that say that Smith Rowe drops into the 8 role, we'd probably have to see a direct number 6, somebody light of João Palhinha, and I think that is just a rarity. I think that would just offer not enough defensively to this Fulham team. Honestly, we'd get a light over in midfield, Russ, I think. So, no, not for me. For me, it's number 10 or bust, really.
Okay.
For myself.
And I'm with you on that. I'm totally with you. And as we speak here on July 6th, what are your expectations of Emil Smith Rowe? Do you expect to see a different player than we saw last season?
My general hunch on the situation, Russ, is I think within the first 6 games of next season, we'll have quite a good idea, a lot of the player, a lot in the career that Emil Smith Rowe will have at Fulham. I think that he has the talent to have the system moulded around him. But there is no question there's going to have to be work on his side that I'm not saying he's not willing to put in. That I think that he's going to have to put up. Will he put that up? A lot. I think he will. But I think this Marco Silva system, we've sort of seen little inklings of this. Does it fit Emil Smith Rowe? That would be the question that I draw.
Right.
For me, it's not even like a question like Emil Smith Rowe. I think that he's maybe a player sometimes that I look at and go, wow, you'd be great at an Arsenal team, because you can be afforded to be a bit of a luxury player and get on the ball and turn. Whereas at Fulham, he's got to be working, you see. And I'm just not sure, is that going to work? Say that I'm being really honest with you, Russ. I'm not going to say that I'm going to give up on Emil Smith Rowe, but I'm not confident.
See, that's very interesting, Charlie, because I truly believe when they bought him to be the centerpiece. They bought him to build the team around. And I think that once he got here, it's a combination of playing with Arsenal all that time, coming back from fitness, not playing enough, and the system. I think it all worked against this player. So the question will be, and I think it'll ultimately come down to Smith Rowe himself. Can he be the player that he wants to be? And we need him to be in this system. We need him to be dynamic. We need him to basically be the centerpiece. And I think only time will tell. I'm hopeful, but I understand why others might have reservations. And I do have some reservations. So it's actually a fair criticism of Emil Smith Rowe. But I'm a glass half full guy, Charlie. I expect a very good season from him. I'm a huge glass half full guy. So I'm expecting a big season from him, but only time will tell if he proves me right or proves me wrong. Okay. Good stuff on Emil Smith Rowe. A great player to get us started. I'm going to talk about a player now that would have been my player of the season if we ended halfway through this season, Charlie, and that's Alex Iwobi. Alex Iwobi was phenomenal the first half of the season. I would say something happened at the beginning of the second half of the season with Iwobi. Did Marco run him into the ground? Did they use him too much? Did he simply run out of gas? I think he ran out of gas. For whatever reason, I think he ran his race halfway through the season. So what are your thoughts on Iwobi? Because I'm a big fan of his, but the second half of the season, he did not show the player that we saw in the first half of the season. What's his best position, by the way? Because he could play out wide. We've seen him play central. He can play on the left. He can play on the right. You're Marco Silva. What is the best position for Alex Iwobi?
Well, it's a difficult answer, Russ, because of a light. I've just said that Smith Rowe's best position is number 10. But say that I look at Iwobi's game. I mean, like, I've got to say number.
Wait till we talk about Harry Wilson.
Yeah. Well, my little illusion that my answer might be quite similar to that question as well. But I think that with Iwobi, what I think that happened with him last season was I think that we saw sort of what you alluded to, Russ, just there. I think that he did burn out. You sort of look at the amount of games that he played the previous season with the African Cup of Nations. I think that didn't help his fitness. I think as well, what happened as well, I think, is when you look at, I think the turning point was Chelsea away. Chelsea away, he was superb, right?
Right.
You look at, I think, what teams sort of did from that game onwards, because I think the key of that game was Robinson getting down the left side, light of Iwobi, which we saw many times within the first 6 months of that season, and getting on that overlap. I think what teams knew to do towards the second half last season was to drop off a little bit and just wait for Robinson, because you know that was Iwobi's main tool, to either go inside or to wait for him. So I think it would be number 10. I think that Iwobi should be utilised like against teams where Fulham are going to have more of the ball, because I think that he does have that creative talent. We saw against, for example, Brighton last season, Brighton away, that superb cross for Raul Jimenez. We saw in lots of other moments as well that he has that bit of magic that is so rare in this Fulham team. I think that he should be utilised against teams that are maybe a bit more weaker, teams where we're going to have a bit more of the ball. Whereas I think there are maybe other players that we're going to talk about in this show that I would maybe suggest otherwise.
Okay. So you like him central. So you don't see him as a winger then?
I think when we're playing teams that are smaller us, I think that he could play as a winger. I think so, but his best position for me, I think that is in the 10. I think that sees him get the best of his talents, where he's obviously a really adept at dribbling past players. He can take players, obviously, he can take players on. He can play that ball, sort of what I just said. I think that would sort of allude to a number 10, because he hasn't got the pace for me to be this direct, really energetic winger. But he's quite physical, so he can sort of get embroiled within that midfield battle. But I would also say that he's going to play on the wing a lot. I'd probably rather see him a lot on the right hand side than the left hand side, because he's right footed. He can ping those balls into the striker.
What's interesting is that I want to say the year prior, I saw him play a lot on the right, and I thought he was very effective on the right. In fact, I agree with you. I think he's more effective on the right than he is on the left, Charlie. But I could see why and again, with Fulham's wingers, they change throughout the game, so you get a chance to see him on both sides. And what's interesting is I think Fulham have some very interesting choices when it comes to wingers. Right now, we've already talked about them having a need to bring in at least one winger. I would totally agree with that. But what's interesting about doing a show like this with you, and why I want to just talk about 3 players, is that I think so many of these players that we're going to talk about maybe in future episodes, Charlie, you can really mix and match. You can move them around. I'm thinking of a player like Ryan Sessegnon. You can move them around, right? Even some players in the back can always talk about Joachim Andersen. What's the best formation for him? Now, that's something that I want to get into in another episode. But what's great about this Fulham side, at least the way that they are right now, is that they're adaptable, that they have players that you can move around, Charlie. I think that's something that's a good thing, but in a way, I think why we're doing this show is we want to look at the position that is best for them. I'll give you a player, and I remember listening to an episode that you were on. You were talking about your history with Fulham. I'm going to ask you, go back and think about Tom Kearney. Do you remember the time when Tom Kearney was put out wide and how that didn't work?
Simmons? Of course. Me and my dad today were talking about that. Saying that Kit Simmons played Tom Kearney on the right. What's going on? I remember that, of course.
So when we talk about players like this, I will always go back to the mistake that he made of basically turning Tom Kearney into a complete passenger. So when you're not in the right position, Charlie, I do think it affects your game. I absolutely believe that. That's why I think it's important to talk about what's the best position for these players, because you want to get the most out of them. Play to their strengths, hide their weaknesses. That's why I wanted to go through this exercise. And thank you for sharing your thoughts on Iwobi and ESR. But let's end with talking about Harry Wilson. Now, what's interesting about Harry Wilson, another player with his national team that plays the number 10 role and is dominant in the number 10 role. I'm going to tell you right now, without sharing the screen, with his time at Fulham through WhoScored.com, I was sharing some clips from WhoScored.com. His best position, numbers-wise, was the number 10 role with Fulham. So what is the best position for Harry Wilson? Can play on the left, can play on the right, can play the number 10 role. I guess this is a good problem to have. But in your mind, what is the best position for Harry Wilson for Fulham Football Club?
When you look at what Harry does for Wales, which I think does have to come into the equation, when he plays in that number 10 role, he's more a second striker for us that comes off Cruyff more, right? Okay. And obviously Fulham have quite a similar sort of prototype of striker with Rodrigo Muniz or Raul Jimenez. Could we see Harry Wilson go off, be sort of like almost a sort of a lone striker coming off the kind of a target man, getting in behind? Because I think that Harry's best asset. I think that me and Dan from the Hammy and talk like this. That Harry's best asset for me, like, is his movement, lighting behind. It's superb, right? I think that say that we can make use of that, and like against teams where we are going to be sort of like I talked about with like while I was talking about like Alex Iwobi, that maybe he should be utilised more against teams that maybe we have more of the ball against. I think Harry Wilson should maybe be used more against teams where we have less of the ball, because I think he's sort of prime example. We are playing at Anfield. We are 0-0. He runs through, gets fouled. Robinson, gets a red card for Liverpool, changes the game through that just movement, that movement of lighting behind. Can we utilise that against the bigger sides? For me, that's Harry's best position. Can we really utilise that? That was what I'd be targeting. That number 10 position does offer that, but I think Harry is very good off the right. I think that is where I see, because he can go inside, he can go to the byline, he can obviously get those runs in behind. Whereas the 10, he is a bit more limited. But I think that we see for Wales that sort of second striker role is perfect.
Okay, so I get where you're going on that. That's actually really good analysis talking about Harry Wilson. While you're talking, I'm thinking about the Brentford game, right? I'm thinking about it at Craven Cottage, the way he played and how he changed the game. He has the ability to do that, and I think Harry Wilson, again, just another player that Marco has to use to find the best way to get the most out of Harry Wilson. It's a very good discussion. I'm glad that we are, like I said, going through talking about these three players, and it's fascinating to talk about players that we're talking about potentially playing the number 10 role. Would you like a little bonus player thrown into the mix, Charlie?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to give you a bonus. I didn't tell you we were doing this, but I thought about, you know what? We're talking about these players. Let's talk about a player that I want to see at Fulham Football Club and play a significant role this season. Let's talk about Josh King. Okay.
Oh, yes. So
let's talk about Josh King. Now, the great thing about Josh King, Charlie, is he can play the number 10 role. I think he can play the number 8 role as well. He can play out wide. I've seen that as well. You can play him in so many different positions. What's interesting is when I'm watching him play the number 10 role, okay, I see the things that he's doing that even I was looking for Smith Rowe and also Pereira to do, he does. So I think he has so many wonderful attributes, and he can play the number 10 role. What do you do with Josh King?
Josh King really excites me. I think he is the best talent that I've seen come out of Fulham since Sessegnon. I think that he, to me, is more exciting than Fabio Carvalho. Will Josh King be a starter for this Fulham team from Brighton away onwards? I'm not sure. Yeah. Would he be really easy into this Fulham team? I think he will. And I think towards the back end of the season, I think that we will see him starting, say that there's towards the 10 games of last season. I think that he'll start 3 or 4. I think that that's the sort of pathway we are looking at for Josh King. With Josh King, I think that he should be really utilised. Once again, like I've sort of talked about this with Alex Iwobi, but those teams that we're going to have more dominance against with the ball. We saw so many times last season against West Ham or even at City. I think it was Man City. I think it was. He can really turn on that ball and he can beat a player. I think that for my number 8, Fulham don't have that at all. I think that has to be utilised. My number 1 storyline, like in Portugal, that I want to try and get a grasp of is where will Josh King be in this Fulham team? Exactly. I think is something to look at, like in pre-season for me.
It's interesting because I just hope that he's with this Fulham team the entire season, Charlie. I hope they do not send him out on loan. Now,
no.
I think that would be a huge mistake. I'm going to say it right now with you because the situation that was brought to my attention, listen, he was with Fulham the entire season, but he should not be with the under-21s. He's too good for that. He needs to play. So if you make the decision to keep him, he needs to play this season significant minutes. I'm not saying start from the get-go, but he needs to be an active player in this Fulham team. I do not want to see him go out on loan. I'm still angry about the Jay Stansfield situation going to Birmingham, and then they like him at Birmingham so much that they make an offer that Fulham cannot refuse. I'm afraid if he goes out on loan, Charlie, that all of a sudden whoever he goes out on loan to, someone in the Championship, is going to throw silly money at Fulham to keep him if they get promoted. So I don't want him going anywhere. Plus, I want him to develop with us at Fulham and become the player that I think, as you said, I think the biggest talent since Sessegnon, and he might surpass Sessegnon at some point.
I think so. I think that you talked about just then, Russ, a lot a championship team coming in for him. I think that say that he goes out a light on loan, Russ, he'll leave Fulham altogether, not even to a championship side. I think that we'll see Liverpool sniffing him for him. I think teams like that will be sniffing him for him because he's that talented. I don't know, like if you saw much of the under-19 Euros, Russ.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was not able to get a stream of that.
the time difference, of course. Believe me, it's tough. Like even watching the NFL, it's crazy times. Anyway, I've cut to the chase. We saw in that how talented. For me, there were numerous games. The Germany game, like in particular, where I think it was 4-4 in the end. He led that England team. He created so many chances. I think Josh King, no matter even for this Fulham team itself, I think for all the future Fulham teams, I think Josh King has to be essential just to keep him on side. That's how good I think Josh King should be.
Okay, and I expect him to be part of the mix and hopefully have an active role. You know, it's funny, Charlie, before we wrap up the show, I just want to share a couple of thoughts on Josh King. What stands out to me in the short period of time that he played in that Brentford match, he was a very big part of that victory. Just a big part of that victory. And maybe he gets glossed over because of what Tom Kearney did. What obviously, the situation, he didn't score a goal, but he was a huge participant in that victory. And I just think he has a lot to offer. Final thoughts on Josh King, and then we'll wrap up the show.
I think that you see with Josh King this ability to sort of retain possession that is sort of like a Spanish midfielder. I think that is a real high quality asset like Josh King. We saw just what you said there, Russ, like in the Brentford game. He sort of saw Fulham be able to hang on to that lead because he was keeping that ball. He has shows a light of Tom Kearney about his game. The ability that his teammates trust him with the ball at such a young age, and his confidence to get on the ball. I think that is just so wonderful. Like I can't speak enough of Josh King. The only thing is, how many angles can I give you, Russ? Because as Fulham fans, we haven't seen enough of him. Next year, say that we do this show, we can probably talk about Josh King at many more angles because we've seen much more of him. But simply last season, he should have been used more. It's simple as that.
I totally agree. I think he was underused, my friend, especially when they were really just needing some kind of offensive juggernaut or just some kind of input and that they were missing. I think if you throw him in with his energy, his hunger, I think maybe things might have been a little bit different. I don't think they used him enough. And I've heard the arguments that they we're really trying to protect him. But I think at this point, you have to take the reins off and let him fly. I think it's time to see Josh King fly. That's how actually I want to end the show. Charlie, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed coming on Cottage Talk, and I really want you to come on frequently this upcoming season if you want to.
I'd love to, Ross. Seriously, this has been a really good show, man. Like, I've done quite a few, and I said to Dan that his was top of our list. I think that you might be challenging Dan for the top spot, Ross. It's been a pleasure, mate. Here's to more money.
There you go. Well, listen, I want to thank you again for joining me, and I just want to mention that Charlie has a wonderful YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to his YouTube channel, London's Original. I would highly recommend it. It's in the scroll below here. Read him on medium.com. He's going to be part of Fulhamish. You're going to be everywhere, my friend. And I would highly recommend listening to his interview on the Green Pole podcast to hear a little bit about his history with him and his father. I'm going to end by just sharing one of the reasons why I wanted you on, Charlie, is I live very far away. I live in America. I never got to experience what you and so many others got to experience. One of the reasons why I'm a Fulham supporter is family. You and your father, that's what Fulham represent to me. Going with your father, going with your family together, that's what makes us different. That's what separates us. So I want to highlight people like yourself that have experienced something that I wish I could, my friend. And I wish you, your whole family, nothing but the best when you go to a Fulham match.
Russ, you too, man. I think that I feel the same thing as you. I think that we talked about before the podcast. Don't worry, I won't dwell on this because I know you won't want me to, but I'm a Jets fan, unfortunately. Russ. So okay. I sort of do feel that. My dad, though, Russ, you'll have to hear this. He's a Patriots fan, Russ, and he's been a Patriots fan since the 80s. So hey, listen. Next time, I'll get my dad on for the Pats Jets game, mate. We'll get him on, and we'll do a watch along. How long can we keep it calm? We'll see, eh?
Okay. Well, you know what? I have another podcast called Patriots 4th and 2. Maybe your dad can join me on that podcast.
Yes. Okay. Let him know. I'll get on the phone.
Let him know. Let him know that I want to invite your father on Patriots 4th and 2 with my son Brady. So he might like that. So that might be fun. We'll get your father on. Anyways, before we wrap up this show, one final time, I do want to mention the Cottage Talk Patreon page. I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, and I want to thank the 9 people that have taken me up on this 2-month access, free access. It's a gift because we're going to be doing a lot of shows, and they're going to be, so many of them are going to be exclusive to the Cottage Talk Patreon page. I'm giving you access for free. Just please do subscribe to the claim that I'm giving you. I shouldn't say subscribe to it, but there is a link. I'm going to be sharing it now, and this will give you access to it. Look, just give me a second. I'm pulling a Goldman here. Just give me 1 second while I pull up this link. So please do check out the link. It is actually on my X account, pinned to it. Also, the Cottage Talk X account. It's also on the Cottage Talk Facebook page. It's in several places where you can find it. So just click on the link and hit claim now, and you'll get 2 free months. You just got to put in a little information, and you will get access to Cottage Talk. And I'm going to be doing a lot of shows. Charlie, thank you so much for joining me. I really, in the end, I enjoyed it, and I hope you did as well.
Loved it, Russ. Here's to many more, man.
Okay, I agree with you on that. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. My name's Russ Goldman. He's Charlie. Thank you, as always, for watching and listening to Cottage Talk.